Welcome to Crafting Your Next Move.
Welcome to Crafting Your Next Move with Lori Kraft, Associate Broker with the Kraft team at Origin Realty Group. Lori is a top producing Houston Realtor with more than 15 years of experience helping clients buy and sell houses across the greater Houston area. Known for her honest advice and boutique approach, she and her team combine cutting edge marketing with good old fashioned service to deliver results that speak for themselves. I'm Lisa Mosby, and today we're talking about buyer feedback, what it actually tells you, what it doesn't, and how to know when it's time to adjust your strategy. Hi, Lori. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I say us like there's a whole bunch of us here, but I meant me and the audience. We're always poised to hear what you have to say because you always share such great wisdom. Lori, once showings begin, how do you process the feedback that comes in from those folks?
I'll tell you, when I was first starting in real estate, I would filter everything. I would like read it first and then go, oh, I don't know that I should share that or not 'cause it's going to hurt their feelings. I quit doing that. And the reason is because sellers really have to understand what the public's reaction is. And yes, sometimes it's not very nice and it's ugly. And then I can help diffuse some of those situations. But if they keep hearing the same thing over and over again, they're more likely to listen to me when I suggest changes.
It doesn't create a surprise when it comes up later or when we need to adjust the price. That makes sense.
Right.
So, how do you separate useful feedback from comments that don't impact the sale?
Well, we go over that. And so a good example is one that I had somebody come through and it was very frustrating because it was an agent. And she said, these are just my opinions. And I'm like, well, I would rather hear what
Yeah.
your seller or your buyer thought. But she walked through it and she said, all the paint is horrible. All needs to be repainted. It does not look like it was well cared for. By the way, house very well cared for. I would have done completely redone all the landscape. She went on and on for like a paragraph. And I was like, well, thank you. And of course, my buyer or my seller was just crushed. And I said, you know what? This wasn't her cup of tea. It was not meeting her aesthetic. And that is the problem. So we're just gonna, if we keep seeing that the landscape needs redone, that the paint all needs redone, that it's not well kept, then we'll address it. But right now, from what I can tell, this is one man's opinion and it just wasn't her cup of tea. So let that go.
And that happens. We have to leave that odd one out every once in a while. When the same you mentioned the same feedback, and when that same feedback shows up across multiple buyers, what does it tell you? How do you move forward with that in a gentle way with your sellers?
Well, same seller, and paint was a problem. And I told him when he wanted to sell. He was very he's an artist, kind of his soul is an artistic soul. So he had a lot of sage green, a lot of faux paint, some tangerine. It was just there was a lot of bright colors. And some markets tolerate that, but most do not. So I warned him. I said, let's see what the market says. But I would highly recommend that if you want this top dollar, we repaint. Anyone do that. So after the third or fourth feedback, he called me and he said, "Okay, you're right. I need to repaint." I was like, "Okay, well, good." And so sometimes I don't have to be the bearer of bad news. Sometimes the market speaks for itself. Now, that doesn't mean that every seller listens to it. So what you get a lot of times with sellers whose feedback is consistent that the home is overpriced, they will convince themselves that that is a tactic by the buyer's agent to try to get the price lower. And maybe that's a tactic for one or two agents, but when every single agent that shows you says you are too high, you are too high. So in those instances, when I start seeing that feedback fall through, I go back to our original CMA and then I look at where we were in the market then because sometimes the market goes down, right? And you have to adjust to it. And I hate those markets because then you're like trying to get out of the snowball and it's miserable. And then I pull up what's going on the market now. And so I already have my numbers ready before I make that phone call. And I said, Mr. Seller, here's the feedback we're hearing. I know it's not what you want to hear. It's not what I want to hear. I want to hear this is the perfect house and it's priced perfectly and your realtor's a rock star. But I'm not hearing that either. What I'm hearing is that we misjudged the market. And so here's what the market is showing us today because I can price your house wherever. You can fantasize about what to price your house. Zillow can tell you what to price your house at. But the reality is the only person that determines the valuation of that house, or two really, is a buyer and an appraiser. That's it. And so we have to listen to what the market's telling us.
So, Lori, if there's inconsistent or unclear feedback, or maybe you're not getting any feedback at all, what does that usually signal? And how do you get the seller to make some adjustments if you don't have anything to fall back on to confirm what you're thinking?
Well, and that's kind of a vague question. So let's put it in some more measurable boxes. So if I have no feedback because I have very few showings, no feedback's feedback, right? If I have some feedback, but it's all over the map, what the takeaway from that is what you're offering does not match public expectation. So if they're all over the map and they're saying, "Well, we liked it, but it felt off to us, or it felt too small, or it felt too expensive, or I wish the flooring were different," and you have all these different opinions about it, what it's saying is they liked it enough in the pictures to get in to see it, but when they got there, it didn't match what their expectation was, regardless of what that feedback is. So then we have to go back to what are we actually presenting? That is honestly usually a cleaning issue. 90% of the time, it's pictures so beautiful. But when you actually get to the house, it's dirty. The windows haven't been cleaned or they have lost their seal, so they're muddy looking. The home is not up picked up when showings show up. The kids' toys are everywhere. That there's a disconnect between what they saw online and what their experience is.
So, Lori, how do you translate feedback into decisions around pricing, presentation, or timing?
It's not as easy as it used to be. And here's what I'm going to tell you about some of that.
Okay.
First of all, what I said before about chasing the market down, right now in most markets, not all, I think the Midwest is still seeing some multiple offers. Even in Texas, we're seeing multiple offers in certain neighborhoods. But for the most part, we're seeing a stagnation. We have sellers pulling out of the market, which is going to, I'm very concerned we're going to end up with a COVID situation where we have no inventory and this buildup of buyers, but we also have buyers pulling back because everything's so expensive and rates are high. So when you have environments like that, it colors how you see that market. So when you have a lot of negative feedback, if it's a lot of negative feedback, there you can do some things to change condition. Those three things have to match: location, condition, and price. They have to match. And if you're not getting offers, something's out of whack here. You can change your condition.
Okay.
You cannot change your location and you can change your price. So the most easily thing adjusted is that price. So we talk about it. And I said it's complicated because I've got one right now that is I was stomping this soapbox on TikTok the other day about millennial gray. I am very bitter about millennial gray because we have people that so bought into that aesthetic. Like they went in all in on it, and so they redid their whole house. So all their bathrooms have been redone. Their kitchen has been redone. Every stitch of that home is gray and black and modern. If you are in some, like, I'll name it, like if you're in town or you're in the Heights or you're in Oak Forest or some of these areas where people have mid century modern homes, that aesthetic will fly. You can probably get it to move. But if you're in a traditional, older neighborhood like Lakewood Forest and Cypress, or maybe you're in Memorial or the more Memorial villages, down there, they want nice, creamy, white, comfortable Ralph Lauren aesthetic, and this does not fly. So we can adjust price, but it's about getting that perfect buyer. Because otherwise, you're looking at redoing your entire house, and nobody's doing that. They're just not. It doesn't make sense financially to do that. So they just, in that case, you're going to tick up days on market, know you're going to have some price drops, know it's going to cost you. And it's just the way the market changed.
What do you do when feedback points to something that can't be changed? How do you guide your sellers through that?
One of the biggest one, I said the location. The only way you can change your location is if you have an asset.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you have personal property, you can pick your house up off its blocks and move it to another lot. But 90% of sales, more than that, like 98% of sales, that's not the case. You're not doing that. You're selling where you are. So your location is critical. If you are backing to a major road, that is going to crush your sale. I can tell you right now. You're going to take at least $20,000 off for that. And if it's noisy, add another 10 and know your days on market are going to be higher. Because you got to find the buyer that wants in that neighborhood that doesn't mind the road noise and doesn't mind that busy road and doesn't mind the fact that down the road they're also going to have a loss. So those are things to consider. So you want to factor that in. The other thing that cannot be changed is, do you have a weird situation, especially this happens in rural communities a lot, where you are somewhat landlocked? Being landlocked is a nightmare. And then you're looking at easements and trying to figure out how you can pay for part of an easement. Or maybe the neighbor owns, this did happen to me on one recently. The neighbor owns your backyard from a pole that was a random marking point to the lake. So you can't build anything on that lake. You can't put a dock, you can't put anything, and you don't even really have legal egress. You can look at it. That's all you can do. That's a big deal. Or if your neighbor is, and this is one you can actually work with, but I have a side smile on that. But if you got a neighbor that is Sanford and Son and has decided that they're going to, fix old cars in their front yard, and the HOA has done everything and they're doing nothing. I will quietly tell you that I have been known to knock on a door and say, "Hey, my name's Lloyd Craft. We're selling the house next door. And we would really appreciate it if you could maybe clean some things up a bit." And sometimes they will, and sometimes they tell you to go pound sand. So you try with that. There's very little you can do about that. The party neighbor that throws parties every Saturday night, and everybody knows about it. You're not going to be able to hide that. It's
Mm.
going to show up. The neighbor that has vacant land, is never built on it, but it's unrestricted. Had that on the same house with the land that went to the lake that wasn't owned by them. Right next door to them, the 36 acres of unrestricted property. And while we were on market, they decided to sell it, and the realtor, because he's good, said highest and best use for that is going to be a trailer park.
Oh, no.
That was a problem. Now, fortunately, nobody would bite on the price they wanted for it, so they took it off market, and then they decided to build something else there. So thank God, because that was divine intervention. But every single offer I almost had would call me and say, "Lori, did you know it's for sale?" And they're saying, and I'm like, "Yes, I did." That's not my due diligence. That's yours, man. So yeah, so crazy stuff happens.
That's it for today's episode of Crafting Your Next Move. If you're thinking about selling in Cypress, Tomball, or anywhere in the greater Houston area, visit craftrealtyteam.com to learn more or connect directly with Lori's team. And don't forget to like, subscribe to the show, and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.